Across the African diaspora, identity has always been a contested ground. Who are we? How do we defend ourselves? And most importantly, how do we unite to fight for liberation? In recent years, two movements have gained momentum in the United States: ADOS, the American Descendants of Slavery, and FBA, Foundational Black Americans. Both claim to represent the true lineage of African Americans whose ancestors were enslaved on US soil. But how do these movements compare with Pan-Africanism, the ideology that calls for unity of all African people at home and abroad? Do they align, or do they stand at odds? ADOS, short for American Descendants of Slavery, was popularized by Yvette Cannell and Antonio Moore. Its core idea is simple but powerful. Not all black people in America share the same lineage. ADOS specifically referred to those whose ancestors were enslaved in the United States. The movement calls for reparation, closing the racial wealth gap, and ensuring that the benefit of affirmative action, black empowerment, and U.S. reparative policies go directly to descendants of slavery, not to more recent black immigrants from Africa or the Caribbean. In their eyes, ADOS is not about rejecting Pan-Africanism, but about drawing a clear line for justice. They argue if our ancestors built this country under slavery, then reparations must come directly to us. FBA, or Foundational Black Americans, is a term popularized by author and filmmaker Tariq Nasheed. While similar to ADOS, it is not identical. FBA frames black Americans whose ancestors were enslaved in the US as the foundation of America itself. The movement celebrates the culture created by these descendants: jazz, hip-hop, soul food, civil rights activism, and insists that this unique lineage should not be diluted under a broad black identity. Like ADOS, FBA pushes for reparations, political recognition, and prioritization for native black Americans over immigrants. In essence, ADOS and FBA both argue for specificity. They want a focused, exclusive definition of black American identity rooted in slavery in the US. Now let's step back. Pan-Africanism is much older. It is the rallying cry of Marcus Garvey, Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, and countless others. It declares that all people of African descent, whether in Africa, the Americas, Europe, or the Caribbean, share a common destiny. For Pan-Africanists, colonialism, slavery, and racism are global systems, and the response must also be global. This ideology bettered movements of solidarity, from Garvey's UNIA in Harlem to the independence struggles across Africa. Pan-Africanism says an injury to one Africa is an injury to all Africans. It's about unity, it's about collective liberation, and ultimately, it's about rebuilding Africa as the foundation for dignity and power for black people everywhere. So here lies the tension. ADOS and FBA focus inward. They want to secure reparations, policies, and recognition within the United States exclusively for those descended from slavery on American soil. Pan-Africanism, on the other hand, looks outward. It envisions a global black unity, transcending borders and focusing on shared struggle. Some Pan-Africanists criticize ADOS and FBA as divisive, saying they risk alienating African immigrants and Caribbean communities who have historically fought alongside African Americans in civil rights battles. Others argue that ADOS and FBA are not anti-Pan-African, but are simply setting boundaries to secure justice in their immediate homeland before extending solidarity abroad. So the question becomes, are ADOS and FBA betraying Pan-Africanism, or are they just prioritizing local justice while still being part of a larger struggle? Critics point out that Marcus Garvey himself, one of the greatest Pan-Africanists, was a Jamaican immigrant in America. Would ADOS and FBA have excluded him? At the same time, ADOS and FBA supporters say Pan-Africanism, while inspiring, has not delivered reparations or tangible justice within the United States. They argue unity is beautiful, but if it leaves us broke, marginalized, and ignored, then what good is it? This debate reveals deeper questions about strategy. Should Black people fight for justice as one global people, or should each group in each nation first secure reparations and empowerment for themselves before uniting? So what do you think? Does ADOS and FBA align with Pan-Africanism, or does it challenge the very idea of global Black unity? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's spark a conversation about identity, justice, and the future of African people worldwide. Because one thing is certain, the fight will continue, and how we define ourselves will shape how we win.